I think we should go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Noel Kopriva. I'm the Agriculture, Food, and Natural Resources Librarian. This is my colleague, Janice Dysart. She's a science librarian. We both work here at Ellis Library. We have a nice small group here today, so hopefully we'll be able to answer questions as we go along. If there's anything that you have questions about, like if something isn't working for you technically, let us know so that we can try and work around you or help you out as much as we can. So some of the questions might be about conceptual questions about metrics, and some might be about technology. Either way, feel free to ask. Okay? How many of you here are in the sciences?
All economics. We have a Nobel Prize for economic science, so that's one. Economics.
Okay. So I consider that a social science.
We do have a Nobel Prize called economic science.
Okay, okay. Well, there you go. So what fields are people in? I know we have people in education. How many of you are in what you would call the social sciences? Okay. All right, so we'll try and address your field in a general way as much as we can. All right, so what I wanted to talk about first was the handout that we have. It doesn't give you any information. This is for you to take notes as we go along. Again, if you have questions, please ask. I'm going to just start out, and then Janice is going to talk. We're going to kind of alternate back and forth between each other because we both have certain things we like and certain things we wanted to talk about. So I'm starting out with a very basic metric. And when I use the term metric, it just means count or measurement. I know there are lots of different meanings of that word depending on the field, but in this situation, we're just using it very generally and broadly. And we're going to start out probably with the metric that you're most familiar with, whether you realize it or not, which is just how many times an article is cited. The thing that I'm going to assume is that you understand why that's important. Does everybody get why it would be important to know when an article was cited? Do I need to be up there? Okay. It sounds like everyone does know. So what we're going to do is focus on figuring out how to find that in different databases. Okay. So if you could follow along with me, how many of you use Scopus?
Try not to.
You try not to?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to show it anyway, just for a second, for a little bit. Maybe we'll convert you over and you'll enjoy it.
No. No, when things over 4% of my citations, I don't go with that.
Okay.
Some students like to. But.
All right. Well, let's see. I'm going to look for Scopus in our database list just by typing the name and then searching. We have 2 Scopus results that would come up here, and I'm going to use just regular Scopus. Okay. And I'm going to look for foodways. I'm going to be helping someone who's looking at Mediterranean foodways. So I'm just practicing for that meeting. And I'm doing just a keyword search to see what's there. And it's a pretty specific thing, so I didn't get many results. However, I just want to show you, as soon as I get the results, I can start getting a sense of how many times something has been cited just by looking here. I don't even have to click on the title, and I can see it's been cited by one person, one document that references it. If I want to, I can click on that, and I can see the article that cites the one I just found. And so what I could do then is, just as a way to collect information, I could mark these and email them to myself. But that's not what this session is about, so I don't want to spend any time on that. That's the main thing that I would show about Scopus if I'm just looking for cited counts. But do you want to step in?
Well, if you're a researcher and you start writing a lot of articles, you can basically create a report using Scopus that analyzes your articles. And to do that, let's go back to let's just go back to main search screen and do an author search. And let's just put in the name of a person. And Scopus, they create, if you write at least 2 articles, they create a profile for you. And you can see they accumulated all his papers, even though he wrote under some different versions of his name. And you can look at the 190 papers by clicking this. But if we want to look at information about the author, we click on his name. And then all this information comes up. We've got the articles listed down here below. It tells you that he's been cited by almost 2,000 documents. So some of them have been citing in more than one, since the total citations is greater than that. And it will kind of go over here. There's a graph for number of citations over time. And you can collect, and also down here it lists the citation numbers, and if you click on this cited by, it'll sort the papers by highest cited first. And you can create a report out of this. I'm looking for the link.
The citation overview?
Yeah, citation overview. Right there, you can click on View Citation Overview. And that kind of pulls everything together. And this is something you can export up here on the right. You can export this report into a spreadsheet, and then you can manipulate it. And if you're trying to do a comprehensive reporting yourself, you'll basically be getting information from some other sources that we mentioned today, and you'll be putting it into a spreadsheet and creating your own spreadsheet, because all of these sources cover they overlap and they cover some of the same things and different things, and there's no one source you can go to that's going to be comprehensive for a particular person's work. You have to basically hunt around to pull up all this stuff. So, but Scopus, and actually notice one nice feature about Scopus, if you're going out for something like promotion and tenure, they may want you to exclude self-citations in your citation count. And that's just something you'd have to find out whether they want you to do that or not, because of course that's going to lower your counts a little bit. But Scopus lets you do that over here on the right. You can just click on Exclude Self-Citations. And you can also actually exclude self-citations of all the co-authors. I don't know if anybody really often does that. But you can click on that and update it.
Okay.
And the numbers will drop a little bit. And the total numbers. So, and that's just a personal preference, whether you do that or not, or if it's desired by whoever you're trying to send your report to. So Scopus is very good at creating citation reports for authors. Did you have a question?
Well, I was just pointing out that lots of journals that they don't have, including all the journals of operations, research, and management science, and they dramatically miss computer science, where the primary publications are in conference volumes, and Scopus seems to not include any conference volumes.
They say, yeah, they say they do. I mean, all of these, like...
I can tell you, they don't show up.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your field, whether Scopus, or we're going to talk about Web of Science in a minute, whether Web of Science is any good either.
It also seems to only include citations in books if the book has a single bibliography at the end. If it has bibliographies at the end of each chapter, they seem to miss those.
Yeah, they have they selectively choose books to cover. There is actually a way, which we won't go into today, but there's a way to use these databases to look up cited references for books that are not technically covered by the database. The information's in here, but you have to dig a little bit to get it out. You can tease it out, but we're not really covering that today. So in some cases, like in chemistry, this person is a chemist, and in chemistry the big database is SciFinder Scholars. So they would probably get higher citation counts if they go use SciFinder Scholar and look at this time-cited information in there. But as I said, or as we said at the beginning, no one resource is going to cover everything. So you can look your name up in here. Once you have a publication record, you can look your name up in here and get what you can out of this database, and then move to another one and get what you can out of that one. And basically, that's why you create your own spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. It's nice to start out with Scopus, or we're going to talk about Web of Science, because it gives you a nice start on a spreadsheet, and then you can just easily add stuff in if you need to do that kind of reporting. Mm-hmm. Do you have a question?
Can you find them?
You can certainly look up your co-authors and see what's listed under them, but they should be listed. A paper with co-authors, the information should be listed under each of the authors of the papers. So you could look them up too.
Is the author sorted out pretty well? If you have a very common name, whether you're Michael Smith.
Well, Scopus does a pretty good job of it. I'd say of all our databases, Scopus probably does the best as far as trying to figure out the correct authors.
They certainly look at where the author is.
Right, and
occasionally they will miss if an author has moved to a different university.
Right, they do. All these databases make mistakes. Scopus makes it very easy to correct mistakes. So we always tell faculty or authors to look their record up in Scopus and see if it's right. Like for another workshop that we did a few weeks ago, we had some people looking at their Scopus profiles, and one person had remarried, and she was publishing under a totally different name, and she wanted to merge her. She had two records under her totally two different names, and she wanted to merge those. And in that case, she actually had to email Scopus and say, I want to do this. And in a few days, they were merged, because Scopus is very good, I found, of correcting mistakes. Okay.
So I guess I'm just going to go back to what Janice said, that when you are trying to figure out information about how many times an article has been cited or how many times an author has been cited, you really do have to use more than one resource. It's not going to happen only in Scopus or only in Web of Science or only in Google Scholar, which are the main sources we're covering right now for time cited. So I'm going to look at Web of Science. A couple of days ago, I was talking to a nematologist, and she didn't know that we had Web of Science. We've had it since January. So it hasn't been that long. It hasn't been a full year. Are you all familiar with Web of Science?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do my database search again, and I'm just going to put in Web of Science here and search database names. And I am going to use the core collections. Or maybe I'll use all databases here. I don't think it matters in this case. Janice wants me to use core. And I think she knows better than I do.
Can you briefly summarize the difference?
Core is, well, if you backtrack a minute to the database listing, it'll tell you It is compiled of social sciences citation index, science citation index, arts and humanities citation index, a data citation index, and patents, and conferences. Web of Science, all databases include some databases that are not technically Web of Science, but they're on the Web of Science platform. So it includes like biological abstracts, which is also by OSIS, but we only had that up to 2013, I think, and then we don't get it anymore. So it's got some additional information. It would primarily be of interest probably if you're in the life sciences to use the bigger one.
But it wouldn't change the functionality for what we're doing today.
And then their sales reps were saying that one thing that they were nearly finished with was to allow you to combine your Google Scholar profile with your Web of Science profile. Have you seen any sign that this is actually being offered to us?
I haven't seen.
It sounded to me like one of the Microsoft Librarian announcements.
I haven't seen anything like that. I mean, the thing about Web of Science is a big difference in Scopus is Web of Science does not create author profiles like Scopus does. You have to create your own author profile through something called Researcher ID, which is it's a kind of a separate website, and you create your author ID and then or profile, and then you can access it from Web of Science. But that depends on people doing it themselves, and not that many people do it themselves.
Right.
So it's not a.
We'll start with an author search so you can see. Okay, I'm going to look for the Dr. Harmata and just ignore that topic search item. Okay, did I spell it wrong? H-A-R? Okay, so maybe I should just do M-A.
Yeah, the thing about Web of Science is up until just a few years ago, they only used authors' initials, which makes it more complicated to try to narrow down somebody to have a common name.
What did you say, Mike? I'm sorry. Probably. I think you're probably right. So I did get 245 results, and it does look like some of them are Harmata Michael, under Harmata Michael, and probably some of them are under with the initials MA. But what you're seeing here, I think, is a perfect example of why the author search function in Scopus is just easier to use. That doesn't mean that I don't recommend Web of Science for getting information about citations, because it's pretty good, but once you kind of get familiar or comfortable with the idea of searching for an author. So you can see here all of the articles that he's been cited in, but if I try to, like if I click here and I say, okay, I'm going to find Dr. Harmata, he must be.
He's in yellow.
Oh yeah, there he is. If I click on him, they're going to give you everything, and it's still 245 that he's listed under. But they're not going to, you can't find your way to that researcher ID, probably because he hasn't given himself one. And if you can, it's still kind of difficult to navigate to. So you're not, sometimes you want to say, well, is he publishing under Harmata? Or am I publishing under, how many names am I publishing under, and see if I can find those separately. But you're not going to be able to go into a researcher ID profile, as far as I've been able to find for most of these folks, kind of like what Janice was saying, and get it there and then dedupe, and then you have a sense right then. Scopus is really good for that. But the issue is, depending on your field, there are going to be journals in both databases that the other one doesn't have. So you need to scope out a little bit and hit both of these just to make sure that you're getting some accurate coverage. And you know, like, depending on your field, you may not, like for you, you're saying Scopus doesn't cover what you're in, what field you're in, so it's doubly necessary to find sources where you can find this citation information. So here I'm going to look at the citation report create a citation report, you can get a sense of, so it says here 245 total again, and then you can look here and see, I think this is pretty close to what we got in Scopus, but it's a little bit, I think we had closer to 250 results in Scopus, time cited 3,302, and it does the math for you. So instead of checking a box and having it recalculate, like in Scopus, it just breaks it out. So you can see self-citations, you can see how many articles have cited, you can see citing articles without the self-citations. And then you get one of the metrics we're going to be talking about later, the H-index, average citations per item. And you can, again, if you're doing this for a promotion and tenure package, you can export this to an Excel spreadsheet. Or you can add it to your Excel spreadsheet that you've already started and manipulate that data. As far as if you're doing other kinds of searching, it does list the articles down here so you can kind of see what they are, and if you wanted to get those, you can. Okay. Let's try a cited reference search here. Let's see. First of all, I'm going to look at this. Citing articles. Okay, so 1,779 articles have cited Dr. Harmada's work in some way or another. So I'm looking here at this, and I'm seeing, one thing I should show you is that these are sorted by time cited, so the top one is 5,000. And it's not...
Article number 1 was cited 5,000.
Right, that's what I meant, I'm sorry. And you can see it's 14 years old, and that makes sense. Usually articles are cited more as they get older, at least up to a certain point, I should say. I'm going to click here. What is to show you analyze the results. And what it will do is it's going to rank these for you, and you can see it breaks it out. And I'm interested only in authors. So I'm going to look at this. And in this, Dr. Harmada is the top author in this set, which makes sense because we're looking at him. 145 records in this field, or in this set, pardon me. Okay, and I could view those records. I could exclude records if I wanted to. So I could look at all 145 of these records and get a sense of the most recent record in this set is August 21st, 2015. So he's publishing right along, right up until just a,
these are papers.
Oh, these are published. I'm sorry.
They're cited him.
Yes, pardon me. He's being cited up until now and probably beyond if we could find it. And again, I guess I would then go back to pointing out that just one database is not going to be enough in this situation. I really like the idea of having one database that we could always turn to find our citation counts, but we just need to supplement. Does anyone have any questions about Web of Science? I kind of went very quickly through that. Okay, how many of you use Google Scholar regularly? Is that your main one?
Well, I'm going to have to compile 7 or 8. But,
right.
But,
7 or 8, okay. And
there's a few things, quite a few things only show up in Google Scholar.
Okay.
One thing that happens is that I've got a paper where with 3 authors, it's the only time the 3 authors are together. If Google Scholar searches for articles that have all 3 names in it, that's far more than the citation. So you start to look at these articles, and they just assume that everybody knows this paper, and then it's not even in the references. They just say following the approach of, and then it's not in the reference. They assume that everybody knows it, so it gets really hard to count when it's listed.
Yeah, that's too bad.
It is. So I just want to say something probably that...
And it's nice, because people assume that your work is so well known that they don't need stuff. But
right, but
trying to convince deans that you actually are in 5 digits in citations is difficult.
So I'm going to advise you, if you use Google Scholar, get to it through our website. That way you can make sure that you're getting the most current information in terms of linking to full text that you can get. So I always go to, again, a database, and I would just search for Google Scholar. And this is the database I'm least comfortable with, so please correct me when I make mistakes. This is what I would do here. I guess I might unclick patents because I don't need those, but do a quick search. Yes, I can't spell Mediterranean.
This one is the best at correcting your spelling.
Yes, Google is the best at correcting your spelling. So what I'm looking for here initially is just the time cited. So right here it says cited by 101, cited by 10, cited by 68. Now, as a librarian, this drives me nuts the way these are. I don't see any organization. I guess it's relevance that they're looking at here, but it doesn't look as organized to me as I would like it to. But then
ask them to create a button you can click on it and put them in citation order.
That would be nice if you could sort them by citation order. So, but you can't. But you can see what has cited it. Whoops, I did something wrong there. Sorry. And here are the 100 articles citing the Encyclopedia of Food and Culture. And then out to the side, just to show you, we have these links that will take you to the full text. And look for this Find It at MU link to make sure that you're getting back into our full text so you're not paying. My main concern with that is just to make sure you're not paying for anything you want to read. Never pay. You're already paying enough as graduate students. All right. Now, I can sort by date, but I can't sort by citation. So I'm going to go back. And I'm going to go back again. If I do this, metrics, it gives me the top publications. Here you can get a sense of the rankings. You can get a sense of, but to me, this doesn't tell me that this is connected to my search. Suddenly I'm out here looking at the rankings of the journals, and I get confused by that. I would rather stick to the basics, which is just the citation count. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Janice because she probably knows more about metrics than Google Scholar than I do. Do you?
Well, I was just going to say, we're going to backtrack here. The journal, that list of journals,
You think it's good?
it's just the top journals according to Google Scholar.
So it's not related
It's not related to your search at all.
Ooh,
Google. But does anybody here have a Google profile? You've got one. Google profiles are great because once you have one set up, Google sort of automatically can populate it, and so you don't have to work to get your articles all pulled together and kind of keep track of citations and stuff. Of course, it's what Google Scholar covers, which may not be the same as Web of Science or Scopus, so it's going to be different. But you can click on this My Citations link above Google Scholar, and you can set up your own. Oh, looks like we have a librarian in here.
Yay, Paula.
I wanted to well, I don't know how we get it. We're gonna, yeah, I'm gonna sign out for her. Okay, I'm gonna do it again. My Citations. It should, you can say add account, and it'll let you sign in, and basically you do the basics on the account, and then Google Scholar will go out there and basically look for articles that it thinks you wrote and put them in, and then you can look them over, and you have the right to kick them out because Google, like Scopus and Web of Science, makes mistakes. But let's just look. Let's just yeah, let's look at yours.
Just Harstad.missouri.edu.
Say that again.
Harstad.
I think I can just look it up. HAR.
STAD. Oh no, yeah, you can do that. Harstad Ron.
Ron, is that? You said your first name was Ron.
Yeah, that would be enough.
Okay,
there you are.
If a person has one, it'll show up at the top of the list here. It says user profile. And you can put in a picture if you want to.
Yeah, it should be showing you the graphs.
Yeah, it will. And here it is. So you can see the articles he's written that Google Scholar found, and you can add your own too, I think. And
we should mention you have the wrong definition of H-index here on this page. H-index is the highest number such that you have at least that many articles which have that many citations to them. And so I don't know where this quote came from, but it's not true.
Came from the article that Hirsch wrote.
Well, and he wrote it wrong. But,
wow.
but that's what it is. So for me, it's 23 because there are 23 different articles that have at least 23 citations, and I don't have 24 articles that have at least 24 citations.
Yeah, we'll talk about.
So the H is across both dimensions.
Yeah, we'll talk about the H factor index thing in just a minute, but from the profile you can see his articles listed and the time cited, co-authors, and summary. So it's similar information than what the other profiles have. And what we were talking about is something called the H index right here. And that is a metric that was created by a physicist about 10 years ago. And he wanted to come up with a metric that simultaneously indicated a person's productivity and impact. And so he developed this thing called the H index, which it's H because his last name's Hirsch, so basically he named it after himself. H index, and what this is saying as
it may be that the 3 dots in your quote are missing off.
Yeah. What this is saying, if you have an H index of 23, that means you have 23 articles that have been cited at least 23 or more times. So it's kind of the intersection of the number of articles you've written that have been cited, basically 23. Yes, 23 articles that have been cited at least 23 or more times. Now, he's obviously written more articles than 23, but the rest of the articles have not been cited more than 23 times. If he gets another article that's been cited 24 times, his H index will go up to 24. Yeah, so the H index should increase over time as you write more articles and as people cite you. So you can't, just looking at the H index number, you don't really know if that's a great number or not so great until you compare it to other researchers in the same field that have been in the field about the same time as the person you're looking at. 23 sounds pretty good to me, but I don't know in economics if that's good or not. In some fields like life sciences, where there are a lot of researchers and they're citing each other a lot, they probably have H indexes that are much higher. But in other fields, social sciences, there's not as much citing between people as there are in the life sciences. So 23, my guess, is probably a pretty good number. But it's just sort of a way you can compare researchers. And it's just one metric. There's this metric right below it, this I-10 index, is something Google came up with.
2011.
And fairly recently. And that his is 31, which is saying he has 31 articles that have been cited 10 or more times. And then they have this little variation of it. 17 of those articles have been cited 10 or more times since 2010.
So all of this happened, this explosion in metrics, I think, has happened because we sort of used time cited, and then there was the journal impact factor, which I think Janice is talking about, too. But there were people in different fields who felt like those metrics weren't accurate or they weren't representing the ways in which their field published and shared information. And actually, it feels like right now, we're getting email. I get an email, it feels like once a week, a new metric is showing up because people are trying to get better and better at showing how many times they've been cited, the impact of the citations, and also their impact as a professional. And those are kind of 3 different things. And
they are being manipulated constantly. And I think that's kind of what you see there on that handout. On one side, we just have all these citation counts. And on the other side, we have these newer metrics. And Janice kind of just talked you through the H-index and the I-10. And now, I would say it is a foundational one. The journal rankings were sort of something that people rebelled against. I feel like the question that I ask when I look at the H-index and when I look at I-10 is, these are based on articles. What if you're in a field where people write books more frequently than they write articles? What is your H-index going to look like? It's going to be lower, I think. So what you have to remember is to compare within your own disciplinary category. Of course, for that to happen, there has to be somebody out there watching that field and calculating those things. You could try to calculate it for yourself, but there are whole disciplines, kind of like Ron was saying, that aren't necessarily making it into some of these indexes. So it's...
Yeah, we should mention there is a Google Books, and if you go to Google Books, it will find citations to you in books.
Right. But then how do you make
them
get
combined with
to each
this?
other?
Yeah.
That's the other question, is if you're finding a lot of stuff in Google Books, how do you put that in? I mean, the best you can do is have 3 separate spreadsheets or one spreadsheet and combine all these different profiles that you're creating of yourself. Maybe you're trying to do some work for your advisor, and you're slowly putting it together. And the more you do this, the more you're going to notice how certain things are weighted. Certain disciplines are weighted, I think, and certain ways of sharing information are weighted. And I think people are creating more and more metrics to try and be better at taking into account the outliers, but I don't think we're there yet at all. What do you think?
No. There are ways, which we weren't going to cover in this workshop, ways you can use Web of Science and Scopus to get citation counts for books that are not indexed by Web of Science or Scopus. There are techniques for doing that. So, but it's kind of like Google Books is separate from Google Scholar, and it's kind of the same thing with Web of Science and Scopus. You have to kind of go behind the scenes to pull out this information, and Noel and I can show you how to do that if there's any interest.
If you ever wanted to meet with us,
yeah,
do that yourself.
We can do that. So, I mean, a lot of this is caused by the people particularly that work at institutions, universities, and colleges are under pressure to prove the value, the impact of their research. And some of the classic ways of doing that have been time-cited information. We're going to talk a little later about something different than that, because things are starting with technology, certain other things are happening that can give you more information about research that you publish. But so it's an ever-changing field. Getting back to impact factors, that's been around a long time now. Impact factors were created by the same publisher that produces Web of Science. And only journals in Web of Science Core are assigned impact factors, or impact factors are computed for the journals that are in Web of Science Core, and you have to meet certain standards to be in Web of Science Core. So they don't cover, so not all journals have impact factors. Impact factors are not assigned to journals in the humanities, like art and music, English. So that's a limitation right there, just not all journals have impact factors. But the ones that do, often you can find the impact factor on the journal publisher site because it is kind of a sign of prestige to have an impact factor. So most publishers want to advertise that fact on their...
Because that's very big.
Yeah, even if the impact factor isn't very high, they still want to tout it as we have one, because not all journals have one. But the easiest way, other than look at the publisher website, but is to use the you can either go through Web of Science or go separately to this publication called Journal Citation Reports. If you just log into Web of Science, there's a link to Journal Citation Reports up at the top. Or you can also just go to our web page and do a database search, looking for a database, and type in Journal Citation Reports. and it'll come up. And once you're in there, what most people want to do, they usually have a particular journal that they want to look up, and you just come over to here to this box, and I'll just do one. You start typing in the name, and then you look at the list that comes up below it, and I want a journal that's just called Behavior. And it will give you some information about the publisher, and what's nice to note is the categories this journal has been assigned to. And in this case, this journal has been assigned to 2 subject categories, behavioral sciences and zoology. And if you come a little further down, you'll see this big, long kind of spreadsheet. And what most people are looking for is over here on the left. They want the most current impact factor, and we're always a year behind. This will be 2014. And this journal has an impact factor currently of 1.230. If you want to go back through the years, you can see that the impact factor for this journal has kind of, gone up and down, which is not unsurprising. And Web of Science also gives you the 5-year impact factor. The impact factor, the first impact factor, is based on 2 years of data. And basically what this is telling you is that an article published in the journal called Behavior is cited on an average of 1.230 times. That's kind of
within the last 2 years.
Within the last 2 years. In the 5-year, it would be cited on the average 1.652 times in the last 5 years. So basically, it's easiest to think of it as the average rate of citation over 2 years, or if you pick out the 5-year, then the 5-year. Now, Scopus, since they're a competitor to Web of Science, they've come out with their own measurement. I need to look up the name. It's called, no, let's see. It's called, I wrote it down because I can't ever remember it. It's called impact per publication. And the impact per publication that you can find in Scopus by looking up a journal title in Scopus is essentially the same as an impact factor. They're using the same computation, but they're using 3 years of data, not 2 years, 2 to 5. And Scopus does cover some different journals than Web of Science. It covers about 22,000 journals. Web of Science covers 11,000. So for some journals, you may be able to find Scopus's version of the impact factor in Scopus, but you won't find an impact factor in Web of Science, which gets confusing, I know. But currently, the most accepted ranking for journals is impact factor. That's what everybody knows. That's what people ask for. That's what they look for. Now, an impact factor, like the H-index, the impact factor by itself really doesn't mean much. Like you go 1.30, is that good? I mean, I don't know. So what you want to do is come down here, go a little further down on the page, and you click on this rank right here. Because what you want to do is see how this journal ranks in the subject categories. So remember, this journal was assigned to 2 subject categories. And in behavioral sciences, this impact factor ranks at 44 out of 51 titles, so it's in the 4th quartile. So it's not great, but just the fact that it has an impact factor means it's still a pretty good journal. Yeah, it's still.
Even in being in the 5th quartile probably means you're in the top half of publications in most fields.
Right. It's good. It's a good sign that it has an impact factor. Of the journals in the field, it's not quite as good as some others, but it's still certainly a very good journal. And if you come over to the other subject category, zoology, It's 65 out of 154, so there's a lot more journals in zoology. And so the same impact factor puts it in the second quartile in the zoology area. So you can see where subject areas make a difference. And if you notice, well, let's do just an example to show how things can vary. Let's look up, we're going to do New England Journal of Medicine. Whoops. Yep, there it is.
Yeah,
this one you always make some news, just like as published in New England Journal of Medicine. And if you come down here and look at the impact factor for this one, it's huge compared to behavior. And this is kind of the evidence of life sciences research. Biomedical research is going to have the highest citation counts, really, biomedical. And if you come down, I don't know what the highest impact factor is. I think it might be 80-something. I'm not sure.
124?
Oh, really? Okay, Cancer Journal, that makes sense, would be the highest. Since there are a lot of researchers in researching cancer, which is good, but that means there's a lot of people out there to cite your work, where in some fields that are somewhat more specialized, there just aren't that many researchers out there to cite your work, so the counts are lower. So if you look at rank for this one, you'll see, not unsurprisingly,
it's 1.
It's number 1 out of 154. What did you say?
Overall, it's the second highest.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't even know that. Oh, okay. So it dropped so it really dropped a lot between the top one, which is 124, and this one. Oh, okay, only 115.
Point out there are real problems with these things too.
Yeah, that's what I was just getting ready to say. There are the impact factor, though it's widely accepted, it's very controversial, and in some cases, publishers have been known to try to manipulate their articles, like asking authors to cite other journals by this publisher to boost their numbers. Some people have been called out on that and been kind of publicly shamed. I just read a couple days ago, the National Institute of Health has come out with a new metric that basically looks at, it's really trying to determine the research that has the greatest impact, and they did a study and determined that only 11% of the research in the biomedical field that has the greatest impact is published in journals with high impact factors. That the other 89% of the high impact research is published in journals that either don't have impact factors or have lower impact factors. So
that's the H index, I would say, maybe.
Yeah.
The other example is, like in economics, we have something called the Journal of Economic Literature. And in each issue, they publish between 4 and 7 articles, and then they publish about 35 book reviews. And at least Insights looks at this as, okay, there were 40 things here, we're going to see how often they were cited. And they're asking whether somebody cited the book review rather than the book. And so those all have 0 citations. Now, if you look at how, suddenly the impact factor would be about 10 times as high if you realize how many articles that really were there that are generating those citations. So I don't know how often that happens, but the other one I'm aware of is some places will publish letters to the editor, and now, in fact, I know of at least one journal that stopped publishing letters to the editor because of this. It was effectively lowering the impact factor.
Do you have a comment?
In that journal you're talking about, they actually don't count the book reviews on those sites.
Okay.
So you can look at the same thing. It'll want to show you like the number of citable items per issue.
Oh, cool.
Okay, and they're only showing about 5.
Right, you're only.
Okay, then maybe it was the one that Scopus does. I found something that was kind of.
It only has 20 citable items per year.
When they show you the impact factor. Okay. But, yeah, it was showing under one. I think it must have been on the.
So yeah, you just have to be aware that impact factors aren't everything. But trying to convince administrators that is sometimes difficult. But it is a good way, especially if you're new to the field, is to actually look by, go back to home, in journal citation reports, you can look up a subject category. I can go back. Go back. You can look by subject category and look at the journals in that category. Let's try. We can scan down through, let's just pick one since we're probably running short on time. Let's just do behavioral sciences. Okay. This is kind of a weird system. You select it up here and then you submit down at the bottom. And you can, and this will give you the list of the journals in their ranked order. And it's going to depend on, you know, when you're looking for an article to, or you have an article you want to publish, you know, it's partly going to depend on the focus of the journal. Because you can see some of these are pretty specialized as far as what they're going to accept.
The topic's very much medical. We'll probably have to go down a couple pages before we get to non-medical behaviors.
Yeah, which is not surprising since biomedical people cite the most. Okay. So now we're going to shift gears and go over to sort of a new set of metrics that are emerging.
They're not as new as they were a few years ago, but if you just want to flip over your paper, we're going to talk a little bit about altmetrics. And the term itself, I think, is it's a contraction of alternative metrics. So we keep talking about how these different databases, these different measures don't cover everything. And I mentioned people are kind of coming up with other ones to try and gauge more accurately the impact of their research or their own impact as scholars. And altmetrics refers to those. And it's a very vague term, I would say. And because it's vague, you shouldn't be surprised to hear that there is no one place, even more than the other metrics. Many of the databases we have will give you an H-index, for example. But to find the altmetrics, they're so scattered that you will have to look in a lot of different places. And I remember the first time I realized that, I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we had a database that looked at all the different altmetrics? And in fact, there are databases that are being developed now that do that. We just don't subscribe to those. So we'll show you kind of what they are and maybe how to look for them most efficiently. I think what I really like to do is look at Scopus, because I think that they are in the vanguard as far as giving easy access to some of the altmetrics that are out there. Okay, so we're talking about things like, just to be clear, if you write an article and people start talking about it on Facebook, how many times it's been mentioned on Facebook, that's an altmetric. If you are in a certain field, let's say you're in physics and your paper gets mentioned in a lot of physics blogs, that's an altmetric. If people start tweeting about your article, that's an altmetric. If people download your article and put it in Mendeley, that's an altmetric. There are all these different ways of people are using to try and figure out how much use an article is getting, how much it's being mentioned and talked about outside of traditional peer-reviewed journals. So anything that you can think of, there's probably a metric for Snapchat, there's probably a metric for Periscope, there's probably a metric for all these other apps that I never use, Instagram, but that's what Altmetrics are. Almost anything you can think of, people are going to be trying to measure it and see what the scholarly impact is.
And it's more, I mean, it's more not so much the impact, because I think impact is still time-cited, but it's more the interest.
Interest, okay.
And it's a way to sort of see, once you publish an article, you may have to wait several years before it's cited. And Altmetrics is a way for you to kind of see what's going on with see what's happening with your article in the meantime, which is kind of fun.
Right. It is fun. And it's something that I think people felt like was getting left out of the discussion about different disciplines. So if you're publishing articles on current topics and maybe somebody's calling you from NPR and asking you to give some kind of expert commentary, you didn't used to necessarily be able to put that on your promotion and tenure application. Now you can, because universities, colleges, they want their researchers to be out there talking about what the university is doing, what their institution is doing, because it looks like the institution is engaged in society, that we're not removed off in our ivory tower doing nothing except teaching people things that don't matter in the real world. And that just isn't true, and these kinds of metrics try to show that a little bit. I don't know if that's really true, but that's the basic reasoning behind them. Okay, so I'm going to look at Scopus here. I'm sorry, I got off topic. Okay, I'm going to look again at Michael Harmada. And let's see. I'm going to find one of his articles. No, you know what? We should look at Heidi Apple, right?
Yeah, look at her. She's a
A-P-P-E-L.
She's a researcher on campus, and one of her articles basically went viral last year as far as being picked up by news organizations. It was even mentioned on the Rush Limbaugh radio show, if you're aware of who Rush Limbaugh is, which is kind of...
It isn't. Isn't it this one?
Let me see. I think it is.
No, it's that one.
This one right here. Plants respond to leaf vibrations caused by insect or herbivore chewing. And I'll let you talk about it.
Oh, sure. No, I mean, you can talk about it. So these metrics over here, I just want to draw your attention back to this. So we do have the time cited, or the citations. We do have this field-weighted citation impact, which I read up on and now I don't remember. That's the brand new one. We have 75 people using Mendeley have downloaded it. There have been 7 blog posts about it. There have been 144 tweets. Can I see those tweets?
Click on View All Metrics at the bottom, and it'll gives you a bigger picture.
Oh, okay, just a second. 52 mentions in 3 additional sources, 46 Facebook, 4 Google Plus, and 2 in Faculty of 1,000. So if I look at this, ooh, and it encourages me to save to Mendeley if I want to. Scholarly commentary, 9 mentions. View all scholarly commentary. So you can get a sense of what people have been saying out in the media, quote unquote. Post-publication peer reviews, you can see that it's been reviewed in Faculty of 1,000 Prime.
Well, just a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, I found the Spanish language stuff.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. It's great. Plants can hear themselves being eaten by the well-known all over Facebook website that I'm not going to pronounce the name of. There's a bad word in it. But this is, to me, Scopus has the best. I would recommend using this for Altmetrics until we can subscribe to something better. Not exclusively over other sources, but because it does gather a lot of stuff together, and I think it's really easy to see and use. And the functionality is pretty high.
This information is coming from a company called Altmetrics.com. And Scopus has an agreement with them to put stuff in their database, and that's what it's pulling from. it's that particular company. If you go to an article and there's not a box like this on the full display of the article, it means there hasn't been any activity on the web about the article. And that's certainly going to be true of older articles, because this is really only the past few years that this has kind of taken off.
Here's the website, and you can see why I'd rather look at Scopus than look at this. It's pretty, but it doesn't lend itself to just jumping into finding the metrics. There's subscriptions that have to be paid for and all kinds of stuff. But it's my understanding, and Janice, correct me if I'm wrong, that the person who started altmetric.com was the same person who kind of coined the term altmetric. I can't remember his name now.
Most likely, since they're the ones that managed to get the name,
right, and keep it,
the word in their name, and kind of copied it.
And what time is it?
We don't have a lot of time left, but if you go back to the Altmetrics website, they have for researchers, if you read about that, because the others, for institutions, we have to pay for that. They have something they call a little bookmarklet. And you can, we've already got it on here, you can go to the second page here, and you can add it to your toolbar, and I think they use Chrome and Firefox and Explorer, I think, are the three you can do, and we've done that. And then if you go to websites that use publishers that they've made agreements with, like Nature and Springer, you can, when you're looking at an article, you can click on this Altmetric, and a little information like you see in Scopus will pop up. And you can do one. Let's do one real quick. Let's just go to Nature. We're just at the Nature site, and let's just look up an article. Let's just look at this one. Okay, now we're at the article, and then you just come up and click on Altmetric. And this little box pops down so you can see basically the same information you see in Scopus on the article. And it just works for publishers that they have an agreement with. But it's kind of fun to kind of play with, particularly if you have an article that's been published in a journal. Which kind of leads to another source, a good source of Altmetrics is the publisher website, because publishers are starting to say, oh, people are interested in this, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon and do things. Elsevier has something called what is it called? They call it I think they call it a dashboard, author dashboard, I think is what they call it. So if you publish an article in an Elsevier journal, they'll give you access to this dashboard, so you can sign onto the dashboard and you can watch and see what happens to your article. You can see how many people download it and just all sorts of things.
They're also now encouraging us to create a little video where we talk about it paper.
Oh, really?
Video up on
Are they paying you for that?
no, they're the way around. Did they ever figure out anything?
Let's look at one journal, Plus One, is one that is kind of famous for doing this kind of stuff. And let's just go to journal articles. Oh, they fooled me. That was journal articles. It's in an advertisement up at the top. I'm sure that happens to a lot of people. So let's just do popular just to get one. Now let's look at this. You'll notice right on their website they have a little tab called Metrics. And quite a few publishers are starting to do this. So it's worth, going to the publisher site and looking around to see what they have. And if you click on this Metrics tab, you can see they've got a little summary here that the article's been, and probably there are page views, which you can see is a huge number, over 200,000. But probably of more interest if you're trying to really gauge use is downloads. And you can see the downloads, it's still a large number, but it's much smaller than over 200,000. And so you can see right here they've computed 3.16% of article views led to a PDF download. And you can also kind of see timelines of when it was of most interest, when it was viewed the most. And you can see it's got, that's kind of interesting, they're pulling out citation counts from Web of Science and Scopus. I didn't realize they did this. Interesting, Google, they make you search, probably because Google updates all the time. And let's just do that just to see what the comparison is. I don't really see. Here it is. 80. So much, you can see it's much higher in, time cited is much higher in Google Scholar, and that's just because Google Scholar just covers so many more different resources than Web of Science or Scopus. So a lot of times your numbers are always going to be bigger.
Occasionally, if somebody changes the title of their paper between the working paper version and the published version, you'll end up getting Google Scholar count for both of them.
So nothing is straightforward.
Nothing is straightforward. And then you build this spreadsheet with 15,000 lines, and you have to figure out how many of these are repeats. The same thing.
Yeah, it gets complicated if you're trying to officially sort things out for promotion and tenure, or getting a raise or something like that. If you have to make a little report, it can get kind of confusing to try to sort all this stuff out and go to the different sources and try to figure out what your accurate citation counts are. I mean, for the most part, Altmetrics right now is just sort of fun to look at. How big a factor Altmetrics is going to be down the road as far as, getting a job promotion, getting raises. Who knows? I mean, that's yet to be determined.
It's like over in the J School, there's a lot of that.
And let's do, we're kind of running long. Let me show you one other thing. I don't know, how many people are familiar with research repositories? Do people know what those are?
I'm going to learn a little more about that one.
Yeah, the University of Missouri has what we call a research repository called MoSpace. And let's just go there. Oops. And if you're affiliated with the University of Missouri, either as a student, worker, faculty member, you can deposit academic material in MoSpace. It can be data, it could be conference, it could be a presentation from a conference, it could be posters, it could be, PowerPoints, videos, it can be anything. And we will put it into MoSpace. And we do have usage statistics for MoSpace. And I'll just, let me just do an example. Let's see, we'll do something called Missouri Hunger Atlas. It will also be full text in MoSpace. And MoSpace is crawled by Google, so whatever is in here will show up in a Google search. And we've got the Hunger Atlas from various years. I'm just going to look at let's look at the 2013 one. And you can view it and look at it. In this case, it's considered a book. They accept all different formats here. But if you come down here on the left, down at the bottom, there's View Usage Statistics. So I can click on this. And wait. And usage statistics will come up for this item. And they had total visits per month and by top country. And the lady who's in charge of most space just told me that they're going to put in a new statistical package in the next 3 months, which is going to have a lot more usage statistics than what they have now. For now, it's kind of interesting to see what countries, like the U.S., which makes sense, are of the most interest in this item, but there's some people in Germany. Of course, we don't know if they're German or if they may be students from the University of Missouri that are doing a semester up in Germany. We don't know that, but you can see, you know, it's been viewed. And then they also get into top cities, which sometimes are a little crazy, I think.
So this is all based on that view.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah. So it's another way, you know, if you need to account for all your, you know, your work, this is another avenue to be able to deposit items in repositories like this. And there are other repositories. I mean, this one's connected with the University of Missouri, so you have to be affiliated with the university to deposit things. Now, when you leave, your material will still be here. We've got a permanent URL for the item, and so you can put it on your resume, and people can look at it, no trouble. And then if you go someplace that has a repository, you can start putting things there. There are also free repositories that you can deposit things in, like Figshare, and they have usage statistics too. So it's just another source of altmetric information, as well as making your research widely available to people.
It shouldn't be that hard for them to put the Google Scholar and Web of Science site counts, and just every time somebody goes to the page, opens the page will automatically update those counts. That should be fairly easy to program.
That should be fairly easy. I don't know if they allow it or not. But, I mean,
yeah, that's true. What the lawyer wants us to do.
Yeah. So I think those are the highlights. Any other questions? If not, I want to thank you for coming. And feel free to contact us. Our contact information is on the handout if you have any questions down the road. Thanks for coming.
Which I haven't got lucky. I've got about 8 different places where I'm making citations.